New Jersey residents will soon need the new Real ID if they want to get on a domestic flight without a passport. The Real ID will also be needed to enter some federal buildings. New Jersey officials are addressing the new policy and deadline. Let's listen in.
Specifically, unless we complete our Real ID readiness projects, we will not have the capacity to handle the demands of Real ID availability. First, we need to finish the systems upgrades we started in November of 2018 with our new front-end portal in all the agencies. These upgrades will reduce our downtime and process customer transactions faster in the agencies. Our mainframe technology provides maximum security for our information, but we need to integrate it with more reliable and flexible systems. For example, the web-based systems user portal we rolled out in November is a platform for Real ID. So not only are we ready for the final software implementation, but our employees are already trained on the basic interface. Over the next 6 months, we will complete all of the following additional upgrades. 1, each of our 39 agencies has a server that is at end of life. Every one of them will be replaced. 2, we will replace over 1,200 PCs as well as keyboards and monitors throughout those 39 agencies. 3, we're installing faster, more reliable driver testing software. 4, we're replacing our point-of-sale payment system with cloud-based technology that expands our ability to scan not only credit cards, but eventually licenses and/or QR codes that can link to and upload a customer's completed application from the web. 5, we're launching a queuing system, which you can see and hear in action here at Trenton Regional. This system will track wait times for each stage of a transaction and allow managers to speed customer flow. This system is piloting in Delanco as well as here in Trenton Regional already. More agencies will be added in the coming weeks. You shouldn't have to go to the agency for every transaction. We have just launched an improved website that you can access today that is not only easier to use, but importantly allows customers for the first time to renew their standard driver license or to replace a lost or stolen license or registration, all online. It also has a Real ID microsite at realidnj.com that tells you everything you need to know about Real ID and allows you to sign up so that you are notified when the agency nearest you starts offering Real ID. Finally, we're changing staffing and hours. The 2018 review of agency staffing that I authorized discovered that on average, only about 60% of our windows, these stations you see around here, were staffed at any point in time. That number drops to below 50% on Saturdays and in the first hour of opening every day. Most working people who can't take time off work will try to come in at those times, and we aren't serving them well. I was astonished to learn this. Our overtime budget is 5 times what it was just 4 years ago, but we're still stretching too few employees to cover our requirements. Over the next few months, MVC will be filling open positions at an accelerated rate and will be adding 209 full-time positions and 80 part-time positions in the governor's FY20 budget. Even those changes will not staff every window. To get to full 100% staffing, MVC will consolidate its hours and move to 1 shift during the week rather than 2. This means all employees present at opening time, not a skeleton crew. All employees present at closing time, not a skeleton crew. Starting July 6th, motor vehicle agencies will be open weekdays 8 to 4:30 p.m. In addition, to serve those who can't get off work during the week, MVC Saturday hours will be extended to 3 p.m. and will use part-time employees to staff those windows, not at the current planned 50%, but at 100%. So we can serve more customers in less time. I have to, at this point, extend my thanks not only to our amazing employees at MVC, the headquarters staff that have worked so hard these past months to make all of these initiatives happen, to be done, as I said, over the next 6 months to be completed. But I have to thank Chris Ryan in the Office of Information Technology. Chris Ryan happens to be here today. And Beth Novak in the Innovation Office, who've been instrumental to accelerating our technological initiatives. And I have to thank Governor Murphy, who has given us the resources we need to put customer service first and foremost here at MVC. At this time, I'll take any questions you may have.
Okay.
Sir.
So I guess the question is, when can people start applying, and how much time will they have before that October 2020?
So the question is, when can people start applying for Real ID, and how much time do they have? We will begin beta testing Real ID issuance in early June. That's next month. We will start with one agency. We will add agencies as we work out the kinks. We will add those agencies following the queuing rollout so that we are capable to handle the capacity. You can find more information at realidnj.com, but from the time we start beta testing, we will be issuing legitimate Real IDs. So it's beta testing for us as we work out the details, but we will be issuing Real ID. What you can do online, by the way, at realidnj.com, the customers can go sign up and input their zip code, and we will let them know when the agency closest to them starts issuing Real ID.
Are you confident that you will be able to have all the licenses up to Real ID level by the October 2020 deadline?
I'm confident that everyone who needs a Real ID, who wants a Real ID, will be able to get that Real ID, license or ID, prior to the October 2020 deadline. Now, let me be clear. There are going to be crowds. There are going to be long lines. We know this. We know that every state is looking at how they're going to get through the next 18 months. It's going to be very tough. But we are doing everything we can, thus the list of here are the new initiatives. We're doing everything we can to minimize the disruption, to make as many resources available as possible, to give every New Jerseyan who wants the Real ID that document prior to the October 2020 deadline. Yes, ma'am.
Just speaking to people on the street, when they go onto a website talking about Real ID and they see extension or compliant, they see New Jersey is not compliant and is working on an extension. A lot of them are getting confused as to that date, and many think that they need a Real ID by this October, which is your extension. Can you kind of clarify that and kind of maybe give people a little peace of mind that it's not, the deadline is not?
That's a great question. When they passed the law, they set it up so that in order to be compliant, you have to provide information to the Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Department of Homeland Security, every year to prove that you are moving towards Real ID. And the way that enforcement was set up, they will not give you the 2020 deadline. They for the last 4 or 5 years, they give you, I'm not sure how long, but they give you that year's deadline of October, and until they get to October, they don't approve the extension. But as long as you provide the information as how you're moving forward, they grant the extension. We do not expect to request an extension this year. But the consumer still has until October of 2020. That's right. The New Jersey customer, the New Jerseyan has until October 2020 before TSA stops accepting that New Jersey driver license. Over here and then here. Yes, sir.
How many licenses, if you know this off the top of your head, are there in New Jersey? How many do you anticipate will be needed for the Real ID? And are people going to have to pay a new fee for this Real ID?
We have 6.4 million licensed drivers in the state of New Jersey. We do not know how many of them will want to get Real ID. I mean, they might choose to travel on their passport. They might not want to share that information. I mean, every document that they give us will be scanned into a federal database. We don't know, and none of the other states know either. This is something everybody would love to know. In fact, states that have been issuing Real ID for several years, some of them still only have about 10% of the population that have actually gotten one. So no one knows the answer to that question. For the next, between now and 2020, if your license doesn't expire, let me say that another way. If your license doesn't expire until after October of 2020 and you wish to get a real ID, you will have to pay a change fee. But let me clarify that if your license expires, you don't have to pay that change fee. Real ID actually costs us more to issue. It costs us more. We have scanning equipment, we have time. It costs significantly more for us to issue a real ID than a standard ID. That said, during the beta testing, we will not charge more for the real ID. During the beta testing, we will not charge more for the real ID. It has not been determined what will happen once we go or are fully live. So I make that caveat that yes, if you're getting one and you're not expired, you'll pay an $11 change fee, but we're not charging more for the actual real ID during the beta testing. Yes.
Okay, so Chief, the beta testing starts in June at one agency. You're then going to add more agencies. When would you expect that the entire state of New Jersey Motor Vehicle Commission agency family will be offering real ID to anybody that wants one?
That's a great question. One of the things we want to make sure we do is get this right. And the reason for beta testing is to make sure we've thought through everything and everything is going the way it's supposed to. California was very early off the mark with Real ID. If you go to the map on the Department of Homeland Security site, you will see California's in review because things did not go right. We have to make sure we get this right. Now, if it's going well, if we don't have any blips, then we'll move to an additional agency. We'll move to 2 additional agencies. We'll move to 4, 10. But we are going to take this as, we're going to do this with regard to how well it's going in each of those agencies, right? To make sure that we get it right. So all of which to say, do we have a schedule? Yes, I have a schedule, but we are not committing to that schedule because the last thing we're going to do is say, well, we're still having trouble here, but we're going to stick to the schedule and maybe compound the problem. We're not going to do that. We're going to do it as we're able to. I don't foresee it taking a year for us to get from agency 1 to agency 39. None of the schedules have shown that. There would have to be a lot of things go wrong to do that. But I'm also not going to give you an end date at this point. I think we'll know a lot more after we've done the first several agencies. We'll have a much better idea.
But just
yes.
to clarify, if I may, even though it's beta testing, early June, first agency office, it's a real ID that's going to be.
Absolutely, that is real ID compliant. Yes, sir. Yes, and then back here, and then.
I understand you to say that you can apply for real ID on the internet. Or you have
No. What you can do on the internet is you can renew your standard ID if you're eligible. So in New Jersey, your license is good for 4 years. Every 4 years you have to renew it. But you only need a new photo every 8 years. So that in between time, today you can renew it by mail if you start early enough, but most people don't. Most people wait to the last minute. What's new is you'll be able to go up right before it expires, go online and do that renewal. Real ID, you have to come into the agency for. Now, once you've done that, once you get that first Real ID, when your expiration date comes up, you'll be able to renew Real ID online. Yes, ma'am.
Just for clarification, let's say your driver's license expires literally days or a month or a week before Real ID is made available in New Jersey. So you're already paying that fee. A lot of people are asking, well, do I then have to pay again another full fee, or do I get credit for what I already paid?
You don't have to pay the full fee for the license. Thank you for asking that. There is an $11 change fee. Right, and yeah.
What if your license expires after 2020 October?
Then if you want to get the Real ID, you'll need to come in between now and October of 2020 and get another license and pay the change fee. Yes.
Pay the change fee.
After 21. If mine didn't end in 21, how much are you going to nail me for getting the license?
I'm sorry.
Say my license is from 21.
Yes.
I got to come in and get it.
Yes.
How much are you going to cost?
There's a change fee of $11, but we will not charge you any more for the Real ID than the standard ID that you currently hold. I had up here, I think, right? Yes, sir?
So if somebody has a license that is expiring, they come in for real ID, they only get charged the $11 change fee, or do they get charged for another license?
If it's expiring, they have to pay for another license, just as you would with a standard, but they'll be able to pay the same fee you would for a standard and get the real ID, because we're not charging more.
Plus $11.
No.
We've just been listening in to a conference on the New Jersey Real ID policy. Our very own Hazel Sanchez is at the press conference, and we'll have more on this story later tonight. We have to take a quick break, but stick around. We'll be right back with a check out your local weather and a lot more stories in a bit.